Welcome, everybody. We are continuing on with our Insights Tech Showcase, and today joined by Tim and Nar from Sitex. Welcome.
Thank you, Lenny and the team. And yeah, we'll just jump right in. I am Tim Lawton, one of the founders of Sitex, and joined by my co-founder, Nar Masalam. And we're going to be walking and talking and showing you a little bit about Sitex. We're going to start off with a little bit about us, touch base briefly on kind of DIY and where we came from, and then jump into the platform itself and talking through a use case. But all in that in the context of the title of our presentation, which is Challenging the Traditional Concept of DIY Consumer Insights, and talking through how next generation platforms like Sitex can transform the way that DIY is done today and going forward. So a little bit about us. Sitex is, and our mission is to automate curiosity. And what we mean by that is we think the days of fragmented point solutions, tedious spreadsheets, unnecessarily long project lead times are over. So that our users and consumer insights professionals and marketers and customer experience researchers can do what they were hired to do, which is think strategically and creatively about their product, their brand, their organization, to make themselves collectively more effective and efficient and ultimately scalable. And part of what drives that is that we think time is one of the most precious commodities. And when people have more time to think, it drives innovation and growth. And that all leads into how we continue to build out the platform. And Sitex is an end-to-end consumer insights platform, allowing all organizations of any size to drive efficient, automated, data-driven decision-making, where consumer insights, marketing, and CX teams at leading organizations can use Sitex to transform the way that they work. And our users are engaging with consumers all over the globe in a single unified solution, from project creation, consumer engagement, data analysis, and reporting, all in one place. But what really makes Sitex unique from where we stand is really what we're trying to solve for, which initially the big thing is the fragmentation piece, which we touched on a second ago. Before, and now we'll talk about this and what DIY used to be, which is a lot of point solutions for data capturing, consumer engagement, data analysis, data visualization. Whereas in Sitex, it's all in one place, so you can save time at each step of that research process. And just as importantly of that is having the flexibility throughout that process. So the first half of the end-to-end equation, as I refer to it, is the project build piece. So being able to adapt to any type of consumer research project, from ad hoc, custom, couple of questions, all the way through more robust experiments like max diff, concept testing, and conjoint, things like that. And then on the second half, the latter half of that research process, being the automation of analysis. So in real time, having one solution where that project exists to engage with consumers. And then as those consumers are responding, to be able to see that information and analysis aggregated and have a suite of tools at your side to be able to adapt to any and all of those types of use cases that we mentioned before. And then lastly, and ultimately, one of the things that drives us internally as a company and externally as we think and build on the platform is making sure that it's a human-centered technology, really focusing on that end user in the individual use cases to really drive value for all types of research teams. I'm going to hand it over to Naira to talk quickly about the DIY and where we came from before we get into the platform itself.
Thank you, Tim. So let's admit it. Traditionally, DIY have been associated with time-consuming activities where you often needed various tools to address each component of the research process, to include survey and experiment tools, sampling tool, and then, of course, data analysis and visualization tool. On top, you also needed a level of expertise, especially around data analysis. And if you're seeking to conduct advanced techniques, be it significant testing and regression modeling for predicting an outcome, that was key for your study objective. And the list goes on. It simply took effort, commitment, that presented a high barrier to entry and adoption of DIY tools. What made things worse is the fact that the vast majority of time wasn't actually spent on analysis, but rather on cleaning and organizing data. An HBR study that we love from a few years ago showed that about 60% of researchers' time was spent on cleaning and organizing data, and only about 16% of their time was spent on analysis and gaining insights. So first of all, that's a waste of human resources and company resources. So what did people historically do? Rightly so, outsource. So the question is why this has been historically the case and how it has changed. Next slide, Tim, please. The reality is that for the longest time, fragmentation mindset prevailed. Technology specialized in only addressing one part of the research process. They were either a tool that collected data, sampled data, or analyzed and visualized data. The main challenge in this approach, especially as more pressure was put on consumer insights team, is that the infrastructure of tools that collected data didn't match with those who analyzed them. So we ended up in a broken process that took time and effort, and that for the most part, people shied away from. But state-of-the-art DIY tools streamline that process. So from the moment data is ingested, the technology recognizes what type of variable it is. So it gets automatically cleaned, formatted, and structured in a way that enables instant analytics. In fact, today's DIY tools really mean deeper and more sophisticated insights, yet easier to design and execute on. So we live in a world where researchers truly can have it all. You can enjoy the efficiency and the speed, and at the same time, the automation that you want with the flexibility associated with it. Let me give you one example. MaxZiff and conjoint experiments, let's say, that I hope many of the listening audience are familiar with. Supposedly your team, insight and innovation team, want to figure out price sensitivity across various product packages, or you're interested in understanding the importance of 20 attributes of a particular product. In the old days, you used to hire an expert person to help you design your experiment. The expert person would work long hours to help you design a balanced experiment. You needed then to build manually all these cards on a platform, and then once fielding is completed, you got an Excel dump. Then, of course, you need to find an analyst who knows how to run Bayesian modeling for prediction if you want it to go beyond counts. Then you DIY world, open new possibility. Sophisticated methodologies at the tip of your fingers. All what you need to do is specify the attributions, and your job is basically done. Then the technology does the rest. And so in this particular example, it gets you the balanced design. So it meets the conditions of being orthogonal, having equal frequency of item exposure, and so forth. That level of automation and speed is what is transformative and quite frankly exciting in today's DIY. And this is how it has changed. And with that, I'm going to hand it back to Tim to illustrate what we mean by that and bring it a bit to life.
Thank you, Naira. So let me share my screen and jump into the platform. So in the last couple of weeks, as we were thinking through what type of features or project or use case to talk through here and to show you all, in the best of ways, and as good luck would have it, we actually had one of our clients in the last few weeks launch a project that we thought was a perfect fit. And while it is yet to be really public, they gave us permission to at least talk through the setup and things. Well, obviously, we moved a few of their identifying questions and certainly the products that they were testing. But I'll jump in and kind of on the dashboard here. In getting started, and part of there's talk about the end-to-end solution and the flexibility on the front and back end. So everything, and not to spend too much time on some of these features, but to just kind of show you the layout of the platform and how easy it is and quick to build projects. So you can either have templates that you can reuse again, grab questions from a library for quick add projects or things that are specific to your company or your industry, and then as quickly as that, also click to add things like MaxDiff, conjoint, concept testing are all part of your menus here as well. But I'm going to jump back into this project that has some data in it to walk you through. In this one, and part of what reason why we thought this was such a great example to highlight the flexibility and the robustness of the Sitex platform is that this particular client use case, consumer packaged goods company, a lot of what they do and a lot of what our users do is using this concept test feature, which can be there's no limits within Sitex on number of questions or number of concepts. So, sometimes we have clients testing a half a dozen or 10 different varieties of concepts for either themselves internally or competitive analysis, everything from videos to images. And then within one project, they have the ability to, again, test multiple, but then set limits. So, they only want each respondent to see one or two randomization, add conditional display logic. So you can ask questions that are relative only to certain concepts and not others, and so forth. And in this one, the reason why we thought it was a really powerful example is because not only was it using the concept test feature, so they see these concepts, and then we'll show you in a second on the analysis to be able to compare and contrast across what they asked about. But they took this project to a whole nother level by adding in a MaxDiff experiment inside of it. So instead of outsourcing, or better yet, or maybe a step after that, was using another software tool, they were able to do all of that in one project at one time, and ultimately get multiple times more value out of one project. So they expose respondents to certain concepts, then followed up with this attribute testing for MaxDiff. And we have a few different ways to do that on the platform. This was, and we'll show you the outputs in a second, the experiment version, which will programmatically display the different sets and set size based off of the project itself and the user's needs. And then, again, the first half of the kind of end-to-end equation is the project build, and then all the things that you would assume that come along with this type of tool, from the logic to design. We actually have automation of languages on the platform as well. So we have clients all over the globe that do research across a variety of countries, and they do have this ability to, within one platform, have automated language translations and be able to, again, keep it all inside one project, one analysis, one project, to be able to do everything more efficiently. So I'm going to jump ahead to the analyze section, and there's a time to talk more about the exciting stuff. And is all, as I mentioned before, all is real time. So we'll track where and how things come in from. I'm going to jump into the first analysis dashboard here. And what we've done, and kind of flow through the dashboards on the build side, on the analysis side, is taking the users step by step from build to logic to design to language in collaboration with users and so forth. And just as well on the analyze side, kind of overview the project stats, where and how the data came from, and then into kind of your question by question throughout the project. And this is, as I mentioned, in real time, but it can be while the project is live too. So if you want to QA your project to check on responses, there's, we have a quota system. If you want to manage or have tighter controls on respondents as they come in, you can kind of start to analyze as responses come in. So you don't have to wait till the project's done to start digging into it and learning as you're going. And then within here, all of this global toolbox, all of your filtering capabilities, and it is kind of full Boolean logic. So and, or, exclude, and so forth, to have that be as kind of complex, I guess, if you need it to be. Bucketing feature. So if you want to look at top bucket versus bottom bucket, generational differences, and so forth, that's all on this initial dashboard in the different questions, different graph types, and so forth. That's all there for you. You can export to Excel, to PowerPoint if you need to take it offline. But we also know that researchers do things, each person has their own way that they like to dig into. Some people like to start off question by question and look at it. Others like to take another step and create pivot tables and look at things in a more holistic way. So on a pivot table dashboard, sort of a dashboard within a dashboard, if you will. So you can create multiple tables in here. Here's one that was already created. We'll pop open for you. So if you want to look at things, maybe not single question, but I want to kind of group things together and see how things are shaping out. This one was saved, but you just select any question that in the project itself, grabbing your rows and columns, and you have the ability to do, apply different variables, add values to it. You can also add filtering on top of this as well if you really want to start digging into the data. And then within here, and again, you can export this, look at things in different ways. This one would kind of look at the concepts across the answers as well for a nested look. But also significant testing. So you can turn that on, different confidence levels to apply there. And then in here, it'll highlight for you. So you can click into it. It's going to take you on that table. So if this table was much bigger and kind of off the page that you had to scroll to, this would click into it, and it would scroll you to that to be able to kind of ease of use while you're navigating around the platform to dig into things there as well. And again, so this is just one view I had. I want to come back to it. You can collaborate with people on the Sitex platform. So Naira's on my team. I save this view and ask her to come in and look at it. She maybe creates her own new view in here to be able to look at things as well. And then this one obviously had the concept test in it. So with here in the specific dashboard for the concept test, the users or respondents rather are, they'll expose to one concept. And again, this could be it could be multiple. It could be images or videos all in one project itself. And then, your questions are going to be the ones that you ask specifically related to those concepts themselves. And have a few different ways to dig into some of those responses too. So if you want to look at things by product, by option, and so forth. And again, you have your kind of global toolbox that will follow you around the different dashboards to either filter, compare, your grouping, your buckets, and so forth, and create saved views to come back to later, export things, and so forth as well. And a few other things we definitely want to highlight that was useful in this project to our clients. So obviously, doing packaging testing, you want to look at obviously how those packages responded and how they performed versus different audiences. And looking at, maybe it is just as easy for you in one project to just apply some filters and look at things that way. But some of the tools that we have, we mentioned part of Sitex is the ability and flexibility on both the front and back end, having a variety of tools to be able to apply to, a variety of types of projects. And so whether it's, concept testing, if you're running a concept test project or have concept tests within that project, you still have those tools as well as, things like advanced stats, the pivot tables to apply as well. So they can be used at any type of project here. One thing we want to highlight is the segmentation. So we have two ways to do persona creation or segmentation, and these can be applied across any project. So you don't have to run, sometimes you hear people saying, we're going to do a segmentation study. And that's the intent or goal of that project, where within Sitex, you can have, again, one project and be able to have a concept test, have the segmentation tools for you to be able to kind of dig into it, layer that on to do different types of analysis within one project. And here we have two different ways to do that. I have a few saved views here. It's called manual and automated, but it really is taking into account different types of questions, and more importantly, the data structure behind that question. So, multiple choice questions are obviously behind the scenes, a different type of data structure than rating scale questions or single row grid type questions. So I had a few save views here. So, this part of what they wanted to look at was, people who said that they were more likely to purchase than others, and they want to look at generational differences as well. So I had a few saved here and within here too. And these can be multi-layered and complex as well. You can add on, demographic or geographic variables or cuts of data on top of it. But this is really how they wanted to look at that. And then if I click add to compare, is an example of another dashboard, this comparison dashboard, which is really just taking, in this case, those two clusters or groups of filters, in this case, representative of a type of person. And this is kind of what they broke out on, likelihood to purchase there. You can see how they split that up and really just kind of go through and see how those two clusters of people, personas, how they answered across other questions across the product there. And then similarly, they want to split that between generational differences. So then create another set of personas based off of age to be able to do that. And again, you can have multiple, there's only two here, but you can have many different views or saved views that come back to. So it's one way to do it. And then the other way is automated using some machine learning in the background, but taking different question types. In this case, in part of the drop down. So what the platform will do is kind of help you take some of the decision making out of, all right, what you just told me, hey, here, go do this type of analysis or run a correlation or a significance test. I'd probably have to do a whole lot of manual work in figuring out or dusting off my stats book to figure out how to do it. But one of the things that the Sitex platform will do was show you and present you with the question types or the number of options where that is possible, and you just have to decide what you want to see. So, we had 3 different question types that met that type of analysis or type of data structural analysis possible. In this type of segmentation, we allow up to 5 different personas. But let's take a look at what 3 shows us. So we don't know anything about these people or these segments that we're asking the platform to group together for us. And it just based off of, the 3 variables that we asked about, 3 groups or clusters of data. But if I come to the table view, you can see, and this will operate just as fast if I switch out number of clusters or different questions. I can add filters on top of this. But just like that, we came up with 3 different personas, 3 different clusters. So for example, this one, cluster 1, on a scale of 1 to 10, these are rating scale questions. They rated the uniqueness was very high or extremely unique to them, much more so than the others, significantly more. So I'm going to click into that to see who these people were. So, maybe it's not a generational difference or a gender or ethnicity difference or something. These people are, that profile of person are united because they rated the uniqueness and differentiation of that concept that they saw very, very highly versus the others. So it really does give users a few different ways to dig into the analysis, look at different question types in different scenarios, and be able to make strategic decisions based off of that. So you could effectively have 1 product or 2 in this case, and probably come up with multiple marketing messages or ways to package or ways to message it, just based off of how, being able to cut into how different segments are viewing things. One thing we mentioned at the beginning, I wanted to jump back to is I mentioned that obviously the concept of package test was important for them and the significance piece of that, and the segmentation piece rather. But I mentioned they layered on the max diff component to that, which again added so much more value to this one single project. And this is the output here that we're looking at. So this is the max diff experiment view, where they start a number of different sets across view these attributes to figure out across. So based off this package you just saw, which of these attributes are the most important. So with max diff, and reason why it's usually outsourced, you usually hire somebody else to do it for you because it is and can be extremely complex. A few different ways to do it using count analysis or multinomial logit analysis and Bayesian modeling. But the great thing is for our users, they don't have to know what that stuff means. They just know that they want to ask this question to users: what's more important to you? What's more likely or most important or least important likely for you in your purchase decision in this case? And then they see the number of times and the appeal count that things were shown and selected, or total count taking into how many times that there was actually shown and not selected. And then you have your utility ranking to see the winners and losers there. So immediately be able to dig into those type of things, manipulate the data, look at how things shape out, apply filters, compare, contrast, make decisions. But again, coming back to everything we talked about, is our mission is to automate curiosity. We want to get you here as fast as possible so you can be curious. So you see these results and say, okay, wow, all right, sustainability. Now let's dig into that. Let's take the personas that we created and figure out which of the personas is more likely to focus on sustainability or price or color. Dig into the filtering and cut this and compare and contrast across, but be able to do that immediately in real time. You don't have to wait for an output or a PDF or a PowerPoint to come to your desk. You can do it in real time while the project is ongoing, and start making decisions as you go. And ultimately, like we said, be able to drive your brand, your company, your organization with real data-driven decision-making. And lastly, the other thing to kind of the icing on the cake is data quality control. So one of the things that the platform does as well, it has an automated data cleaning system. So a project is paused here, but if it was live and if I just paused it, it would pop up and ask me if I wanted to clean some of this data, and it would give me a pop-up and it would run through and it would track for duplicate IP addresses, repeated answers or empty cells and things, and tell me, hey, you have 2 or 3 repeat IPs for some reason. There are a few here because we imported some data to show, but you could click on those to remove them. You could add filters, look for straight lines. You wanted to dig into open ends, perhaps see some of those, and for some reason you want to remove those. It'll take them out of the analysis, so you can actually get to a data set that you're most comfortable with, that removes outliers and what have you. You still have the data there. It's still in the project and the platform, but it cleans it for you and hopefully lets you sleep it better at night, knowing that your recommendations, your results are in line with as as clean a data set as possible. And then lastly, in case you do have open-ended questions, we saw on the responses, if you want to look at the raw data for open ends, but you also have the aggregated text analysis here as well to dig into open ends and different responses and things like that. You can search for different topics along with the associated sentiment per those as well. That was, we know it's kind of a lot to dig into for one project, but we wanted to cover as much as we could in that one project that we thought was such a great example for to highlighting not only the flexibility, but the power on both the front end and the back end of what is possible within the platform itself. And to kind of wrap things up a little bit, we just really wanted to circle back on some of the things that Naira talked about, some of the things that we're trying to do as a company, as a platform, really taking DIY to the next level, taking away some of the myths of what DIY is and more importantly, what it is today and what it's going to be tomorrow. So you can be faster to market. Things should be automated from the front end automation of either using a template, clicking to add questions or experiments, and then obviously equally and maybe more importantly, the analysis to be able to drive a really deep understanding and, again, time for thinking and time for being curious. I'm going to hand it back over to Lenny and Naira if you want to add anything else, but we probably have a few minutes left for questions. I wanted to offer that up for people now.
Oh, that was great. So we normally I kind of cue things up on the front end on where you guys sit, but I'm glad that I didn't this time because you just did a fantastic job of differentiating that. If we look at the ecosystem, everybody's jockeying for differentiation, right? In a variety of different ways. But I haven't seen anybody else but you focus on the flexibility and the depth and the power of the analytics and the data on the back end. That's not taken away from anybody else, right? Everybody's just doing different things, but it was incredibly impressive. Especially, I love seeing the piece around the automated data cleaning. That's just one of those.
Yeah.
we all know it's a pain in the ass, I mean, even in grit, when we do grit, it's amazing how much data I've got to throw away. Researchers are like, you straight lined, I know you did. So yeah, and it is just it is a tedious process, but it is a reality. Data quality being such a big deal. Just the thinking to even build that in. Let alone the ability to really navigate back and forth between these very complex analyses. Just hats off.
Thank you.
Everybody that we're seeing today has, does some things really well, right? I mean, everybody has their own unique capabilities that they've really rocked it. And I think that is certainly yours. Everything you've done is amazing. That analytical capability. So,
well, thank
you. So hats
thank
off.
You.
Whatever. So now a couple questions, and those that are the audience, they are submitting questions. You guys will have a chance to be able to interact with them via chat or follow up. But this is my chance to ask that. Talk a little bit about your pricing models, if you can. So, is it annual license, pay as you go? What's that look like?
Sure. One of the things that we've learned, Lenny, is that different people like to do different things different ways, to include how they pay and use software.
Especially procurement departments.
Yeah.
So, in the vein of continuing to be flexible, we think it is flexible and can scale to small teams. We work with startups all the way through Fortune 500 companies, but it is software subscription as software as a service. So there is that's kind of the majority of our clients are on a subscription-based software, and then obviously the panel. So we do connect to panels for customers. So that's the only kind of the other side of it. There's a software fee for usage, and then the kind of either can ad hoc or prepay and get a discount on panel completes and things like that. But we do also offer services around everything from scripting to more kind of I don't like to say full service, because that maybe denotes a bit of an agency feel to us, but full service around, hey, Tim and Naira, I have this project. I know what I want to do. What do I ask? How do I do it? How do I create it? So we actually have researchers on the team that can connect with clients and walk them through questionnaire creation and suggestions and best practices and things, because one of the things that we continually try to do, from not only the features and functionality, but also that element of having that service offering, is to help people do good research and and make sure that we're doing that at every stage.
Okay, that's great. I often say I've never seen a technology play in this industry in 20 years ever succeed without a service capability. So it never seen it. So makes maybe one day somebody will prove me wrong, but I haven't seen it yet. All right, that's fantastic. Is there anything else that you would like to tell the audience before we wrap up and keep the train on schedule?
Maybe one thing. Nara, you have anything off the top of your head?
I would say, you often hear, which is for us a little bit heartbreaking sometimes, there is this fear from technology that it's gonna take people's jobs and the terrible things like that. We, as Tim said, we're very human centered, and our goal was actually right from the beginning, the inception of it, is to enable rather than replace. And I think it's important to maybe drive that message continuously, that technology, think of technology as your friend and as your superhero rather than your enemy.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. I'll pontificate on that for a second, because I was thinking about it earlier, that the everything that we're seeing here today, right, for our audience, they are all enabling technologies. They're not replacement technologies. Have we created efficiencies in process? Absolutely, right? Yep. No doubt, and that's what technology is supposed to do. It is supposed to allow us to get rid of the drudgery, the things that can be done cheaper and faster and potentially even better, to free us up to do the things where we add value with our brains. And I think we, as an industry, we were on that. I've been characterizing it that, before 2020, we were technology driven.
Yep.
Now we are technology led. So
Right.
that was the story of 2020. We hit that inflection point. And not to replace people's jobs, but simply to be more responsive to a rapidly changing world. And all of the tools that we're seeing today, everything, you guys are all examples of that, rose to the occasion, to allow brands to be really, really responsive, to be agile, to deal with a crazy situation that we were all, as individuals and as business professionals, were going, what the hell? Our world was just changing fast.
Yeah.
And we couldn't have adapted to that if it weren't for platforms like you. And now we've crossed that bridge, and here we are. So going forward, I think that the future is bright for the insights industry, because insights have never been more in demand, have never been more valued. And now we have the ability to deliver at the speed of business, and we've proven it by leveraging platforms like you and everybody else that's presenting today.
Yeah. And one of the things I like to say is that, what we strive to do, and part of everything we do, is help our customers learn at the speed of the consumer, which I think is an ever increasing race to be able to do, because as we saw last year, literally overnight sometimes. The reaction to that has been, it's been a crazy ride especially the last 18 months or 12 months anyway. So,
and we're not done yet.
Nope.
We're not. Yeah. And perhaps, Lenny, to add one more thing with your permission, technology can do the magic of automation and things like that around numbers, but it miserably fails over and over again in telling meaningful stories.
Sure.
And the meaning of the data. And I think more and more we're going to see that 60% being spent on manual tasks to actually being freed up for super talented people to think about, what does that number mean? What does that result mean for my customers or for the brands I'm serving?
Yep, agree. One last point. I know we got a weird vibe here. I don't know why. Maybe it's just going to take a long day. But one of the key findings in the Grit report that I thought was amazing was there were two charts. One that we looked at kind of health of the buyer side and the supplier side, right? And we looked at that between their staffing, budget, and technology investment. And on the buyer side, we saw that there was very little decline, if any, in staff size. Actually, in most cases, there was an increase, while also in every case, an increase in technology spending. So I thought that was a huge takeaway, that there was not the appearance that on the buyer side that technology was replacing jobs. If anything, technology was actually driving the creation of more opportunities to understand and do more value. Now, on the supplier side, unfortunately, that wasn't the same story. And that stinks. Right. Yeah. I've been through that 2008 during the Great Recession, right? When I decided I didn't want to be a CEO of a full service research company anymore. And I feel for everybody who's living through it again, right? Now, but it is what it is. And we'll adapt as an industry. But there's going to be a lot of supplier side researchers that can probably go to the buyer side now, because they are, they've bought into this, right? And they're doing it right. So anyway, we could go on and on. I think maybe we'll do some other type of podcast or interview or something at some point and continue this conversation. But thank you guys so much. That was great. And now we'll continue on with the day.
Thank you, Lenny. Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.